A Malaysia Airlines flight with 239 people on board, including 4 Americans, has gone missing.
What if a modern passenger jet carrying 239 people could simply disappear? No distress call, no explosion, no confirmed crash site, just silence. On the night of March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 departed Kuala Lumpur for Beijing on what should have been a routine overnight journey. On board were 227 passengers and 12 crew members, representing more than a dozen countries. Families expected a normal reunion just a few hours later. Instead, they became part of one of aviation's greatest mysteries. At 12:41 a.m., the Boeing 777 took off under clear weather. The aircraft had no known mechanical issues, and both pilots were highly experienced. Captain Zari Ahmed Shah had logged over 18,000 flight hours, while First Officer Fariq Abdul Hamid was completing another routine international flight. For nearly 40 minutes, everything was exactly as planned. The aircraft climbed to 35,000 feet, followed its assigned route across the South China Sea, and remained in normal contact with air traffic controllers. Then came the final radio transmission.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
The voice sounded calm, professional. There was no hint of panic or emergency. Seconds later, something extraordinary happened. As MH370 crossed from Malaysian airspace into Vietnamese control, its transponder, the system that broadcasts an aircraft's identity and location, suddenly stopped transmitting. On civilian radar screens, the aircraft simply disappeared. At first, controllers believed it was a temporary communication problem. Small interruptions occasionally happen, and crews usually restore contact within minutes. But this time, nothing came back. Repeated radio calls went unanswered. Vietnamese controllers waited for the aircraft to check in, but it never did. Valuable minutes passed as different control centers tried to determine who still had contact with the flight. By the time everyone realized MH370 had truly vanished, precious time had already been lost. Then investigators uncovered a shocking clue. Although civilian radar had lost the aircraft, Malaysia's military radar had continued tracking an unidentified plane. When the radar data was analyzed, it revealed something no one expected. Instead of continuing toward Beijing, the aircraft appeared to make a sharp turn, fly back across the Malaysian peninsula, and head northwest over the Andaman Sea. These were not random movements. The turns were smooth and deliberate, suggesting that someone had intentionally changed the aircraft's course. But who? Was the crew responding to an emergency? Had the plane been hijacked? Or had someone inside the cockpit deliberately redirected the flight? No one had the answers. Meanwhile, search and rescue teams rushed to the South China Sea, the last location where civilian radar had seen MH370. Ships, helicopters, and aircraft searched thousands of square kilometers, expecting to find floating debris, fuel slicks, or emergency rafts. Instead, they found nothing. Not a single confirmed piece of the aircraft. It was as if a Boeing 777 carrying 239 people had vanished without leaving a trace. And that was only the beginning. Because the biggest breakthrough wouldn't come from the ocean. It would come from a satellite orbiting thousands of kilometers above the Earth. As the first day of searching came to an end, frustration was already growing. Rescue teams had covered thousands of square kilometers of the South China Sea, yet there was no wreckage, no emergency beacon, and no sign that flight MH370 had ever been there. It didn't make sense. A Boeing 777 is one of the largest passenger aircraft in the world. If it had crashed near its last known position, investigators expected to find floating debris within hours. Instead, the ocean remained completely silent. Then everything changed. Malaysia released military radar data confirming that the unidentified aircraft tracked after MH370 disappeared was almost certainly the missing Boeing 777. The radar showed the aircraft turning sharply away from its planned route, crossing back over the Malaysian peninsula, and continuing northwest toward the Andaman Sea. This wasn't the path of an uncontrolled aircraft. The turns were smooth, precise, and consistent with deliberate navigation. The investigation was no longer focused on where MH370 had disappeared. Now the question became, why did it change course? As investigators searched for answers, another team of engineers began studying something most people had never heard of: satellite handshakes. Although the aircraft had stopped transmitting normal flight data, one communication system on board continued sending automatic signals to an Inmarsat satellite about once every hour. These signals contained no voice recordings and no GPS location. But they revealed one critical fact. MH370 had remained in the air for several more hours after disappearing from radar. That single discovery transformed the entire investigation. The plane had not crashed shortly after losing contact. It had continued flying through the night while the world searched hundreds of kilometers away. Engineers carefully analyzed the timing of each satellite handshake, measuring the tiny delay between the aircraft and the satellite. Those calculations produced two possible flight paths. One stretched north toward Central Asia. The other curved far south into the remote Indian Ocean. To determine which route was correct, investigators examined another clue hidden inside the satellite data, a small change in radio frequency known as the Doppler effect. After days of analysis, the evidence pointed overwhelmingly in one direction: south, far into the southern Indian Ocean. It was one of the most isolated places on Earth, with deep water, violent weather, and almost no commercial air traffic. If MH370 had ended its journey there, finding it would be incredibly difficult. The search operation changed almost overnight. Ships and aircraft were redirected thousands of kilometers away from the South China Sea. Australia took the lead in coordinating one of the largest and most expensive search operations in aviation history, with experts from around the world joining the mission. Day after day, new satellite images appeared to show possible debris floating on the ocean. Each discovery sparked hope. Search crews rushed to investigate every promising object. But every time, the result was the same. The objects turned out to be abandoned fishing gear, shipping containers, or ordinary ocean debris. Once again, MH370 remained missing. As weeks turned into months, investigators faced even bigger questions. Who, or what, had turned the aircraft around? Why had its communication systems gone silent? And if the plane had flown for nearly 7 hours after disappearing, what really happened inside the cockpit that night? The answers, if they still existed, were hidden beneath one of the deepest and most unforgiving oceans on Earth. Months passed, but the Indian Ocean refused to reveal its secrets. Search ships equipped with advanced sonar scanned thousands of square kilometers of the seabed. Autonomous underwater vehicles explored depths of more than 4,000 meters, mapping underwater mountains, cliffs, and deep valleys. Every unusual shape brought hope. Every investigation ended in disappointment. At the same time, investigators turned their attention to the people on board. Captain Zari Ahmed Shah, one of Malaysia Airlines' most experienced pilots, came under intense scrutiny. Authorities searched his home, examined his computer, and analyzed the flight simulator he used for training. One deleted simulator route appeared to extend toward the southern Indian Ocean, fueling worldwide speculation. But investigators never found conclusive evidence linking that simulation to the disappearance of MH370. Aviation experts also noted that experienced pilots often save and test many different flight scenarios during routine practice. Attention then shifted to the passengers. Early reports focused on two men traveling with stolen passports, raising fears of terrorism. However, investigators later identified them as Iranian migrants seeking asylum, and no evidence connected them to the disappearance. With hijacking unproven, several other theories emerged. Could a fire have disabled the aircraft? Could a sudden loss of cabin pressure have left everyone unconscious while the aircraft continued flying on autopilot? Or did someone inside the cockpit deliberately change the flight's course? Each theory explained part of the mystery, but none explained everything. Then, more than 16 months after MH370 disappeared, investigators finally received their first undeniable breakthrough. In July 2015, a large piece of aircraft debris washed ashore on Réunion Island, nearly 4,000 kilometers from the suspected crash area. It was identified as a flaperon, a movable section of a Boeing 777's wing. After detailed examination, investigators confirmed the heartbreaking truth. The flaperon belonged to Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370. Over the following months, additional pieces of debris were discovered along the coasts of Mozambique, Tanzania, South Africa, and nearby islands. Ocean current studies showed that these fragments could indeed have drifted from the southern Indian Ocean. The discoveries confirmed one tragic fact. MH370 had ended its journey at sea. But they still could not reveal the aircraft's exact resting place. Despite years of searching and one of the largest underwater operations in aviation history, the main wreckage and the flight recorders, often called the black boxes, have never been recovered. Without those recorders, investigators cannot say with certainty what happened during the aircraft's final hours. More than a decade later, MH370 remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in aviation history. A passenger jet vanished from radar, changed course without explanation, flew for hours into one of the most remote oceans on Earth, and left behind far more questions than answers. For the families of the 239 people on board, the search has never truly ended. They continue to hope that one day the wreckage will be found, finally revealing the truth behind that silent night. Until then, MH370 stands as a reminder that even in an age of satellites, advanced technology, and global communication, some mysteries can still survive. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more in-depth investigations into aviation disasters and history's greatest unsolved mysteries. And before you go, what do you think happened to Flight MH370? Was it a mechanical failure, a deliberate act, or something we still haven't discovered? Share your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, stay curious.